And well, the DLSS 3 update has been released for Cyberpunk 2077, and we already have some DLSS 3 updates on some other games like The Witcher 3 Next Generation, A Plague Tale Requiem, Spider-Man Miles Morales and Spider-Man Remastered, so we have lots of DLSS 3 updates, and now we have the DLSS 3 on Cyberpunk 2077 after it was shown some months ago. Now, if you don't know what is exactly the DLSS 3 and how it works, basically the DLSS 3 is a mixture of DLSS Super Resolution, which is basically the DLSS 2 point something, with Nvidia's Reflex and Nvidia's Frame Generation. Nvidia's Frame Generation is basically the GPUs, the RTX 4000 series, that generate kind of They are fake frames, okay? They're fake frames, they're not frames generated inside the game engine, so they're kind of guessed/fake frames. And after the card does those kind of guessed/fake frames, the card injects those same frames on the game engine. But that causes latency, and that's why we have the reflex activated automatically as soon as you use frame generation in order to mitigate that same latency issue. Okay, so that's basically it. The DLSS 3 is the DLSS 2 plus frame generation plus Nvidia's Reflex. And I thought, once again, why not test it myself and show you the results and actually give you my opinions. Well, let's go. Today's video sponsor is GVG Mall, where using my SKG discount code leads to a 25% off across several products, making a Windows 10 serial key only $16. After the payment, you'll receive the key in your account, and all you need to do is to introduce it in your Windows settings, and bam! You have an activated system. And well, now we are at Cyberpunk 2077, running Cyberpunk, and as you see, we have new settings on the DLSS tab with DLSS Frame Generation, with the DLSS Super Resolution now instead of just DLSS, so the nomenclature actually changed. Let me just adjust the camera a bit. And then we have the other options, FSR 2.1 is still here, and so on. As for the settings, I'm using high settings, okay, not ultra settings. I'm using the high settings with no ray tracing to start with. And once again, 1440p to start with. Also, let's disable the reflex, Nvidia's Reflex, or let's just have it enabled. Why not? So, high settings, 1440p, we're having, in this same scenario, from 100 to 110 FPS. Which is quite expected. Native resolution, 1440p. Let's put some weapons, I guess. At least a pistol. Yes. So 100 FPS, around that. Seems good. No motion artifacts. It's nice. Now let's use DLSS, the normal DLSS, without the frame generation, to quality mode. Apply. And we go from 100 to 145, 140, let's call it 140. Okay, it looks good. It looks good, not gonna lie. The normal DLSS is fine. Now, the normal DLSS makes you lose some details in some certain aspects. Let's see, for example, off. Not in here, but in some sides of the road and in some really specific areas, the DLSS does reduce the shimmering, but at the same time it reduces the shimmering, it actually reduces the details as well. I've seen it happen, mostly on the street lights and some things like that. Okay, works fine, 140 FPS. As soon as we enable the DLSS feature called Frame Generation, okay, the card will generate kind of guessed or fake frames and will inject those same frames on the game engine. Also take consideration that as soon as you activate the frame generation, the super resolution will go to auto. So if you want quality mode, you have to put it manually on quality and then apply. And it goes to auto once again, so quality, finally. And now it takes some time to load, some stutters here and there. Let's wait. It may take some time. In the first times it may take like 1 or 2 minutes, which is quite insane actually. just does not work. Maybe due to the amount of FPS numbers. I don't really know. Okay, let's try again. Let's try, for example, let's disable DLSS. And let's try 1440p with ray tracing settings, all on, with the ray trace sliding at medium, okay? Okay, at normal settings we're running about 50 FPS, 55, yes, 55 FPS, seems okay. Let's then enable the quality mode. We went from 55 to 90, which is around 40% increase. Okay, this is running ray tracing, by the way. We still have some shimmering on the lights, but nothing astonishing. Very acceptable, actually. Very nice. Okay, now let's try enabling the frame generation. So we have a base of 90 FPS, around 90 FPS, okay? Let's enable the frame generation, apply. Also, once again, you have to put it on quality mode because it just goes to auto as soon as you enable frame generation. Okay, and now it works, so I was kind of right. It didn't work before due to the high FPS numbers somehow, okay? And we went from around 90 FPS to 130, so it's a 40 FPS increase. So there's 40 FPS that the GPU is kind of injecting in the game engine. So we have 40 fake frames, let's call them that, per each 90 frames. Okay, that's a lot. We have some motion artifacts there on the top. Well, it's something that may happen. As for the latency, I must say that I'm actually surprised. I thought that it would have way more input latency, but no, the mouse is very responsive. I tested the DLSS 3 on Plague Tale Requiem, and the difference in terms of input latency was quite noticeable. So you had way more input latency with the frame generation, but it seems that in this case, in Cyberpunk, yeah, it's quite nice. It's responsive. It's pretty playable, the mouse just reacts very nicely. That's nice. We do have some... yeah, we do have some motion problems. Let's call a car. Let's call the... yeah, let's call the Porsche. The Porsche, or the Porsche. Whatever. Oh, come on, car. Okay. Let's see in terms of movements. Let's stick at the wheels and the rear bumper of the car to see how it goes in terms of motion artifacts. Remember that we're running ray tracing settings activated, okay? Ray tracing settings. Okay, so far it looks good in terms of motion artifacts. Let's see a more detailed area. Let's go to the city, I guess. So going to the city, we can see that the lights, the lamp lights have indeed movement artifacts. We can see them if you look at them. You can definitely see the movement artifacts, but it's nothing. It's not a deal breaker. It's nothing astonishing. It's perfectly playable, but you can definitely see that there is some artifacts. But I mean, it's playable, so. What are we complaining? I mean, the input latency is good, the motion artifacts are little, and you go from 90 or 80 to 120 FPS, and that's a lot. Bam. Just looks good. Let's test 4K now. Okay, let's go to 4K. Let's disable the frame generation. Let's disable this. Go to 4K. Bam. Graphics, let's disable ray tracing as well. So now we're running 4K. At 4K high settings, this card can achieve around 50 FPS, because this card is not meant for 4K resolution due to the lower bit buzz width, so 192 bit only. But we're reaching 50 FPS, yes, 50 FPS, which is not that great. As soon as we enable the DLSS Super Resolution to Quality, we go from 50 to 82, which is a pretty respectable number. 82 FPS, very nice. Now it's kind of playable, and it looks good, looks better than 1440p. And then let's enable the frame generation, and once again put it on quality. Let's load it. Okay. This time we didn't get that many FPS, but we did have some, which is nice. So we went to almost 100 FPS with the frame generation, and it still looks good. Once again, we do have motion artifacts. I can see them on the lamp lights. You may not be able to see them on the video, but you will see them once you're playing. Yeah, we kind of have some flickering as well. That should not happen at 100 FPS, but we have it due to the movement and the fake frames. Okay, so it's kind of some visual artifacts, but it looks very decent actually. The same on the cables there, as you can see. Once we move, and if we move further, it makes, yeah, it has even more movement artifacts, but it's nothing that you'll be just looking at while playing, so it's perfectly acceptable. And we have 100 FPS. Now let's try with ray tracing to see how many FPS we can get at 4K with DLSS and frame generation. And we still have 70. Now we have more artifacts because the base number of FPS is also lower. So basically, the lower the amount of base FPS that you have, the lower quality the frame generation will be, because you'll have lots of fake frames in between the real frames. And if the fake frames are a big percentage of the overall frames compared to the base frames, it will mean that you'll be more prone to actually notice the failures of the fake frames, let's say. But so far it's not bad. It's not bad. We have some artifacts, but not bad at all. It's actually much better than I was expecting. Much better. The DLSS 3 is working very, very well. Very, very well. Okay, that's my moto. My bike. Definitely much better than I was expecting. Props to Nvidia for making this actually usable, because when they actually had the DLSS 3 in the first tests, the input latency was crazy, so it was definitely noticeable, and the motion artifacts were way worse than they are now. So once again, props to Nvidia. They made a very, very good implementation here, and if it keeps improving, because we can still see some motion artifacts, but playable once again, if it keeps improving, DLSS 3 will be very, very nice. It will be a very, very nice addition, hands down. And well guys, once again I must have to say that I am impressed with DLSS 3, I won't lie, it is working pretty fine for what it is. We always knew that it would have some movement artifacts, even the normal DLSS does, so the frame generation would have even more. Now in terms of input latency, like I said, I tested some games and some games are really bad in terms of input latency, but the DLSS 3 implementation on Cyberpunk 2077 is very nice in terms of it, so input latency. It is very responsive and you can't definitely see the difference, you can't. Now overall my advice is, if you're going for high FPS numbers and if you're using ray tracing, let's say if you're using DLSS in this game and you have like 90 base frames, 90 frames per second in the base when using DLSS for example, then you use the frame generation. It is perfectly fine because you'll have 90 real frames and you'll have maybe 40 fake frames, meaning that the motion artifacts won't be that much. If you're going for, let's say, 60, 50 real frames coming from the game engine, sorry, if you have 50, 60 real frames and you use the frame generation, you will have lots and lots of movement artifacts. So resuming and concluding, for high frame rate achievements, frame generation is very, very good. Now, if you are having already very low frames and you are aiming for higher frame rates, you can have those higher frame rates with frame generation, but you'll have more and more motion artifacts, okay? But if Nvidia keeps improving it, DLSS 3 will definitely be the thing, and AMD needs in fact to release FSR 3 in order to compete, because this technology, if well implemented, will definitely be the shit. So yeah. And that's all for today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video. Leave your comment in the comment section and let me know what you think about the DLSS 3, if you tested it or not, what you thought about this video, and see you in the next one. For me, the DLSS 3 actually surprised me, and it is better than I thought, at least on Cyberpunk 2077. See you in the next video.